Hello and welcome to our show, The Awakening, here on WGSN-DB, Going Bold and Going Solo Network. The information and opinions expressed on the show are just that, the opinions of the individual speaking based on their individual personal experiences. They are not intended to diagnose and do not constitute professional advice or recommendations. So, you know the pain, stress, and struggle that divorcing men and women go through? Well, there is a way to find peace and sanity and assist the lawyer through the divorcing process, saving the client thousands of dollars. My name is Tina Huggins. I'm your divorce coach specialist, divorce consultant, restorative family mediator, and conflictual co-parenting coach. And thank you for joining us today. So our guest is Ingeborg. She is a business personal relationship alchemist. Her last name is Mooiweer. And I didn't quite say that right, so she gets to correct me in a little bit. Ingeborg is based in Hemstede, and I'm trying to remember how to say things in German today. So North Holland, Netherlands. Ingeborg is a groundbreaking integrative relationship healing coach and emotional intelligence expert. With over 3 decades of experience, Ingeborg specializes in transforming relationships, empowering lives, guiding individuals and couples on their journey to freedom from drama and toxicity. Her expertise spans a wide range of areas, including healing from historical, and that's important, historical narcissistic personality disorder, abuse, codependency, attachment issues, and much more. Ingeborg's approach combines the realms of healing and coaching, offering bespoke solutions through a seemingly magical process. Ingeborg believes that mastering interpersonal relationships is crucial for both personal and professional success, and her services are designed to provide clarity, connection, and peace across all aspects of life. So welcome, Ingeborg.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And lovely to have heard you pronouncing my name. And you did a great job. Thank you. It's a hard name for English-speaking people. So,
well, and I spent time in Germany, so it shouldn't be quite that hard for me, but still, it's that tweak, and I haven't been there for a long, long time. So the fact that you're working, and our conversation today is about healing from narcissism. So I assume that you've got a story that you're going to tell, but before we get started into that story, I want to kind of explain what narcissistic abuse is as it comes from Google. So Google says that narcissistic abuse refers to a form of emotional and psychological manipulation inflicted by someone with narcissistic traits or narcissistic personality disorder. This type of abuse often involves various tactics aimed at controlling, belittling, and undermining the victim's sense of self-worth and reality. So when we talk here on the show about narcissism, most of the time we're using that coin word that's kind of been thrown around everywhere, because there's a lot more to mental disorders than just narcissism or personality disorders. So Ingeborg, I know that you have a story, so would you please tell us how you got involved and where this is coming from in your life?
Yeah, sure. I grew up with a narcissistic mother. So I experienced it myself firsthand. And well, obviously it took a bit of time for me to realize that what was happening at home wasn't really what should have been happening. And the trouble and the problems I had was obviously because I couldn't escape, I couldn't leave. So it's starting to form you, it did something to my identity. I start believing that I was wrong, that I wasn't good enough, that I think I had quite a strong identity when I was born, but I kind of lose that. And yeah, I had trouble finding my self-worth, my self-esteem, the things I felt. There wasn't room for what I felt, or it always should have been different. And the main character in our household was my mother. So everything sort of gathered around her, and that was the only thing what was important. So it did a lot to me. And it took me some therapy, to be honest, to get to where I'm now. Yeah, so it's trouble with my self-worth, and I start having trouble, yeah, believing myself because of what she was doing. So yeah, it's doing something about your self-belief as well. Um, so it's not a good environment to grow up in.
Yes. And so that our viewers understand, most of us are probably here in the US, and now that Ingeborg is with us, we'll have people from the Netherlands watching. This situation, the narcissistic abuse,
Mhm,
happens all over the world. It can be in any relationship and any type of relationship. You might find it in a work relationship, from a boss
yeah.
to an employee, or from an employee to a subordinate below them, or the boss above them. So
Mhm,
these are things that we will experience, or have experienced, or know somebody that's experiencing them. So this
mhm,
information, even though Ingeborg is not from the US, she's working with anybody that can speak in her language, obviously, and then she can work with those people who can speak English. So here in the US.
yeah.
And so to kind of touch base with what Ingeborg is saying, I want those of you who are marrying and deciding to divorce somebody who is narcissistic. These are important things for you to think about for your children. We can't take those children away from that parent, but we can teach our children how to love, be loved, and how to express themselves in a safe way. And so those are things that we can talk about either later or in a different show. But most definitely, I want you to think about this, because Ingeborg is coming in from as being the child from a mother who was narcissistic to her. So, Ingeborg, how old do you think you were when you started to realize that this is not normal?
Um, well, I think I have a very good memory, so I know some things when I was really little, but it started to become more obvious after I was 5. Then my parents got divorced, so my father moved out, so I stayed with my mother and my brother. And that after that it started. Like she was sort of laying in bed and we had to take care of ourselves, get ourselves to school, start doing some household duties, which were far too big for us because I was still little. I had to do the groceries on my bicycle. And in those things, it's not a problem to help your mother, obviously. But there was always something wrong in there. There's always something else I should have done, which I didn't know because I was little, so I didn't understand. And then there's sort of the silent treatment came because I did something wrong. So she needed to punish me. That's what she thought. And that made me so confused because I didn't understand. I did the groceries and, what should I have done different? And the silent treatment is very, very confusing. Because you start sort of racking your brain. I should have done something different, and you want to make her happy again because then you get love, and that's a sort of circle, a dynamic you get into. It's very confusing for a child. Um, and you start doing more and more, and that was sort of the base for me, or the foundation for that people pleasing, which I did like sort of later on. You start like looking at her, oh, what can I do to make her happy and not make her angry and not get the silent treatment? So you do anything just to get that uh, um, a slide, like a breadcrumbing, what they call it, of love. And yeah, it's what I said. It's very confusing to be in that environment.
Yes, and I'm actually going to look up. There's a book called A Child Called It. Um, And in that book, he talks about how just kind of what you were explaining,
Hmm.
and and he goes through the part where how she's abused him. I mean, severely abused him. At one point, she has him in the bathroom with two cleaning solvents poured in together, making a gas inside the bathroom, and she puts towels at the bottom of the door. She was very, very abusive. And in that, I mean, anybody would think, oh, I just want to get away from my mom. But here they take him out of the home and they place him in a safe home. And then at some point, he runs across one of his brothers, and all he wants to do is see his mom. He just wants a little bit of love from his mom. And so
Yeah.
your story right there is, it kind of tells me about that. And the author of that book is called David Peltzer. And David went through all of this. And later on, there's another book that's written by his brother. But when your mom, I mean, your story is very classic. Your mom is being mean to you and punishing you for things you don't even know you did wrong. The
Yeah.
silent treatment, you mentioned the silent treatment. And these are things that even though you were going through this, you talk here about you just wanted her to love you.
Yeah, and make her happy. That was my sort of main goal, even then when I was really, because then I would get some attention, or I would get some love, or maybe even get a cuddle or something. But I could switch like that, and that was the scary part. Always, you never knew when things would change. So I was always on the lookout, and I'm very now. It's very helpful in my work, but back then being very observant, look at her face, hear the tone of voice, the way she looks at me, if I did all the things which I should have done. And then obviously I was a child, came back from school or something, I forgot, whatever. And then she could switch like that, turn into this rage. And people who have experienced that know, like the narcissistic rage, it's crazy. It's not like you're just angry and you sort of, use your voice a bit and maybe a bit louder, but they just go off.
Right.
And then after that, usually the silent treatment, what I said earlier, could last for 3 weeks. It's not even like a day, but for 3 weeks, you didn't know. And then it would change, usually when she needed me to get some attention. And they use it like for control as well. And I would do anything. I write her letters. Actually, this weekend went through some photos because she passed away 2 years ago. And we had to sort out some photos. And I found a letter I wrote to my mother when I was very, very little. I didn't even know that was back there. And it was like to make her happy again. And it's so sad because, when I read it, I thought, oh yeah, I remember writing it back then just to make her happy, just to be sort of the special one again for a little while. Yeah.
Yeah. I I don't believe my mom was a narcissist, but there was some narcissistic traits that she
Mhm.
definitely was this way towards me. And so when you're talking about how you were trying to please your mom, I so wanted my mom's attention. I wanted her to be happy with the things I was doing. And so like there was at one point where I dated this guy because I thought she would like him, that she would approve, and she
Mm.
didn't like him. So now that she didn't like him, well, that made me mad. So now I'm going to date him for sure. And then I bought her a diamond ring at one point, trying to please her
Yeah.
and trying to get her attention. Not once did she wear that ring, not once. It was one of those types of things that's like, yeah, whatever. And
Yeah.
I had spent some hard-earned money as a young 20-something-year-old trying to please my mom. So these are narcissistic traits, but I want to kind of touch in the divorce realm of this, just so that
Mhm.
our viewers that are contemplating divorce or in the process of that. So this is going on, as you heard, to Ingeborg as a child. And I can tell you, coming from my relationship with my late husband, he would tell me all of these stories. And at one point, they were having their house reconstructed because of a fire. And she, the mother of the children, I guess, was upstairs with the children and was punishing them. I couldn't tell you how she was punishing them, but the worker recorded everything and called it abuse. He said he gave that to my late husband and said, "This is going on in your house." And this is some of the things that he didn't know because, of course, children like yourself, when you were young, were told you
Yeah.
can't tell or you'll get punished. And so that stuff goes on when you are probably not present. And so if you're wondering whether you should get out, these are things to think about as you're contemplating things, because the abuse that is going on to you can possibly, not always, go on with the children that are in your household. And in David Peltzer's case, it went on to only him, and he had other siblings. After he left, then she chose one of the other siblings to punish and treat horribly. So these are the types of things. And I think in David Peltzer's mother's case, I think she had another diagnosis other than just narcissism, but it's the aspect of abuse that's going on. So Ingeborg, what other types of things would your mom do that you would consider today as abusive or improper?
Well, make me look like a fool in front of other people as well. And beyond like just sort of joke and teasing and stuff like that. And make me doubt myself when I did something, or even when I was a bit later, a bit older, with my boyfriend. I was upstairs at home. He rang, and then she said, "Oh no, she's not home. She's trying to divide us. She's trying to become between us, telling him stories about me, which I've never done. So to make me look awful." And what she did, because my brother was like the golden child and I was like the black sheep. You see that like quite often with narcissistic parents. And then she would like, give him all the attention, make me feel worse. And when I said something about it, she even said, "Yeah, it's true. I don't love you. I love him." Things like that, which makes you even more eager to get some attention from her. Yeah, oh gosh, there's so many things like what I could say. It's like ongoing.
Yeah, and it's funny, I just said I didn't want to call my mom narcissistic, but almost everything that you did, my mom did towards me. Now, she loved my sister very, very much, and she loved my brother. And my leaving did not make her pick another child to pick on. She just had a problem with me. But I remember one time I was working at the local Elks Club, which is a man's group at the time, and I was working as a bartender, and she came in, and she was already drunk. And I let her in. We had to buzz people in, so I let her in because she was my mother. Well, at one point, she decided that she was going to make me look bad by getting on all fours like a dog and barking. And so one of my coworkers says, "Isn't that embarrassing to you?" I says, "I'm not the one on the floor acting like a dog." I totally just walked away from that. So then she got up and left. And I mean, those are the types of things that they'll do. And I remember her following me away from an event. We were skiing or something, water skiing, and she followed me away and she verbally attacked me at my car. And I said something to her about power struggle. And I gently shut the trunk of my car and I said, "Just go ahead and hit me right here in front of everybody." And again, she wasn't about to make herself look bad in this specific case, so she moved away and I left. But yeah, just like you, I had some very similar events happen with my mom. And the boyfriend thing, there was another one. I was dating my first husband, and I went to take a shower and I had a girlfriend present, and her and my mom were in the kitchen, and neither one of them saw me come out of the shower. And I overheard my mom actually say this. She goes, Tina's not good enough for him. You should break them up and you should have him for your boyfriend.
Ah,
And later on, she did attempt that. And then her and I went hand to hand over that type of thing when she got out and she actually apologized for the whole thing. But yeah, so very similar events that you went through.
yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, and yeah, you can't do anything about it. Even, even if you try, they're so manipulative and they try another way. And there's always something, especially if it's like, a parent and a child situation. But even so, if you have like your spouse, that's what they need to do. That's their way of surviving, actually. And you can't really win. The only way for me to win was leaving home. I left home when I was 16, very early, which was a bit insane, but I needed to. And I got the help from my father, and he sponsored me, and I left home. I was still in high school, so it took me some time to yeah, get my grounding again. But even if you like with your spouse or something, the thing is because they don't go for therapy, it's not their fault, So if you stay in that environment, you know what it will be like, and you start losing yourself more and more. Just what I did with my identity. That happens. You start doubting your self-worth. You start doubting yourself. You can't even believe yourself anymore. You're
Mhm.
just a fraction of what you were before. And even, or especially if you have children, the only way, or the only advice really I could give is leave. Because
Yeah. And
there's nothing what you can do, no gray rock method or anything, what people tell you. Surely it helps some, eh? But for your own sanity, the only way, and for your children, is leave and start rebuilding your life and your identity and your self-worth and everything what you lost when you stayed with your spouse.
And I agree. And that's kind of what I'm kind of hoping our viewers can take away from this. If you are being abused, what is going on with the children and how can you take care of those kids? That is very important. So some of the adult, the husband wife kind of narcissistic aspect. So I obviously was the wife in my relationship. And so some of the things that, I'm in the early stages of writing a book. And so some of this stuff comes out to where there's gaslighting. You talked about what you're confused and you don't know what to believe. Gaslighting is very much there and they gaslight you. And so a lot of people don't understand what gaslighting is. So gaslighting is a lie that they tell you, but they take what really happened and change it to this lie. So they will try to get you to believe what really happened didn't happen. And so they take your narrative and they turn it into their narrative to try and get you to believe that. For one instance, my late husband, or excuse me, my ex-husband,
Mm.
he had told me I had stuck a box of herbs a half a mile away from my house, and then I went 4 hours to go to a martial arts tournament over the weekend. And when I come back, that same box of herbs was in the kitchen again, as if I had never put it. He said, "No, you
Yeah,
left it." And
yeah,
so I had somebody with me that proved I didn't leave it. And he says, "Well, I don't know. The box of herbs was here." Well, honest to God, Ingeborg, I
yeah,
believe for the longest time that we might, and I believe in ghosts, but I didn't believe this. But
mm,
yet he convinced me through other episodes that he was controlling inside the house that we had a poltergeist. So I'm telling my mom this story, and even at one point she says, "Well, maybe you ought to talk to a Catholic priest and have him come in and cleanse your home."
yeah,
And if my mom's believing in something like that, it took me years, Ingeborg, to
mhm,
realize that that was a gaslit situation, that he had me gaslit into losing my mind to think
yeah.
I was going crazy with this poltergeist idea.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the whole purpose, to gain control over you, and you start doubting your feelings, your reality, your mind. That's what they do with those things, and it starts really small usually, and that's their way of doing it. So it goes under your skin, if you understand what I mean. That's what it does. It's like with these small things, you think, oh, you sort of brush it off, and then they keep on doing it. And it's yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
That's the
You
word.
know,
It's crazy. Yeah.
there's just so much, my late husband would tell me all these stories that his ex would keep him up and not let him sleep throughout the night. And then, of course, she would go back to bed and
Yeah.
sleep all day, and then she would do it all again, so that he was losing his mind in the fact that he was unable to sleep. And he was a workaholic, because if he worked, he didn't have to be anywhere close to her. And he
Yeah.
would take their 6 kids with him most of the time. She would keep back the oldest son because he was the oldest and was there before the marriage. And then she would just cause havoc with the rest of the kids, all kinds of stuff. And there's still stuff. They're all adults, and there's still different types of abuse that goes on. And so there is so many ways, when I see this with my clients, usually one thing that's always there is financial abuse. And I saw that firsthand myself, doing paper investigation for my late husband's divorce. And for his attorney, I would find numbers of money that she was taking, and she was manipulating the money through bank account and bank account, and then destroying properties. I ended up finding a property that she hadn't paid the mortgage on in like 5 months or something, and having to get the attorney involved in order to save that property literally within the last hour of that day. And so
Mhm.
we see so much of this kind of stuff. Animals, I mean, this takes you out of narcissism and puts you into another class of diagnoses, but
Yeah.
animals can be abused or killed, or these types of things. And usually these people have 2 different lives. They might even have 2 different marriages. And
Yeah.
you see that kind of stuff go on. And yes, we see it in
Yeah.
the TV shows, but it's real. That
Yeah. It's
stuff
real.
really happens.
Yeah. 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 That's true as well. When they can't like keep up the work, so to speak, in one marriage, they just try to find another one. And it's that form of power as well, because they thrive on power. That's what they like. This gives them some there this the ego boost, and because there's no identity in themselves. They have a lack of self-worth and a lack of identity, so they need a lot of people, the admiration, the power, what they like, to even feel something. And even that's questionable, but they might experience some sort of feeling, but it's not the way we experience feelings. They have no empathy or things like that. It's not the power, and that they can do whatever with you. That's what they like.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, they have multiple women, and there are, vice versa as well, obviously. Um, to keep
Mhm.
that going, to keep that supply going, actually, because that's what they want. And you be discarded, and then you be getting back if the other one is not in picture or something like that.
Right. And so, Ingeborg, we've talked about what you've experienced and what I've experienced and other things like that through the experience part. So how do you work with your clients to help them? Obviously, this is on the other end of the abuse. You're helping them heal. So
Mhm.
how do you do that?
Well, I do that through my program, which is tailor-made. 3 to 6 months usually. That's what I do. And we have to get back or go back to the core issues, because there is a tendency of very empathetic people. If we talk about a spouse, they attract narcissists, or they can attract narcissists. So, and a lot of times, what I said earlier about myself, that people pleasing, that's what they come into. That's usually the problem. And then we sort of, well, we discover and we paint a picture together what's really going on. Because they can describe what the problem is in their life, but it's always something underneath. Something which happened in their childhood, which makes them people pleasing, would make them attract a narcissist. So we have to go back to the core issue, and we have to heal that inner child and their behavior as well. So we have to heal the wound which is there, and if you heal your wounds, you start feeling different, and then you start behaving different. So it's a process. It's a lot about like emotional unmet needs which they had from childhood, and we start learning and reparenting their inner child, and get the real insights, as I call them. It's not what they think it is, which is partly true, but like the real insights of what's going on, and educate them, like learning to see the red flags, and helping them even with WhatsApp text, if they start dating again, so it could be anything. So it's a whole process. And then, yeah, once it's done, once the wound is healed and they've learned, different behavior, different behavior, and then some start dating again, and I can help them in that process as well, and and regain their identity, their self-worth, their real good boundaries. It's a lot of time we spend on boundaries.
Boundaries are probably the most important thing, and I have a situation in my life where boundaries have had to be put in place, not more so to keep me from doing things that would like I would reach out. I needed the love, and so I set the boundary so I wouldn't reach out, because you reach out and then it's about their needing something, and so I've had to put boundaries there. And so boundaries are huge and very important when we're dealing with narcissistic people. And so the work that you're doing so that they can go and find a new mate that's a healthy mate is huge. I can tell you that once I left my first husband, I was in series of different types of relationships, and they weren't really abusive until like towards the end. And then I was drawing the narcissist to me, and it's like, okay. So my youngest son actually told me, Mom, just stop dating for a while. And it's like, oh, yes, don't date and work on me. So that's what I did. And I did a lot of Tony Robbins events and stuff about relationships and whatnot. And so I made a list of the perfect man. And that's what my late husband was. My late husband was my perfect mate. He
So
was.
you manifested him.
I manifested him, but I had to do the work. I had to work with somebody like you to do the work on me in order to get where I needed to be to attract that kind of person.
Yeah, that's true, because otherwise it's like a pattern. You keep on attracting the same kind of person. They look different. They may may act a bit different in the beginning, but underneath it's all the same. And what I always call is like a wounded person. If you got a wounded person and together they got a trauma bond. Is that what they call it? And you can't attract a healthy, emotionally healthy person if you're wounded yourself. So you have to do the work on yourself to be able to attract an emotionally healthy grown-up. And then you start attracting different kind of people anyway, because the old, version of you is not there anymore. So the new version is not attracted to that wounded person. And you see the red flags and you just, discard them. That's not for me anymore. And those boundaries, what you talked about, a lot of times you can only, if you feel them, you can set those boundaries. But a lot of times people forget there's like consequences as well. If people overstep your boundaries, you have to set a consequence. Otherwise, they will never learn. And you don't respect yourself. Eh? If you do respect yourself, you give them a consequence and you walk away. And that's
Mhm.
it, So people keep on, saying, oh, I don't like what you're doing, I don't like what you're doing, and they still stay in the same situation. That's not healthy, So
And
boundaries are very important.
the boundaries, they are important. And so I don't think a lot of people understand boundaries. They think a boundary is I'm going to tell you not to do this, and then you better not, or else. That's kind of a boundary, but the boundary is upheld by you. You're
Exactly.
the one. If you tell them or else, then you have to do it. My dad would tell me, don't ever make a threat, make a promise.
Yeah, just do it.
Just do what you said. And if you aren't willing to do that when you set that boundary and make the consequence, then you need to change that consequence into something that you'll do. But for me, like the incident that I mentioned, is my boundary is that I would get a mean text from this person, and my response normally would be to halt that by saying whatever mean thing I had to say. Don't text me again. And that's not the boundary I needed. For me, my boundary was don't answer it. That's the gray rock, drop it and walk away.
Yeah.
And so because of that, that person has been less communicative with me, which has been more healthy for me.
Mhm.
And when there is something that I do feel needs answered, I answer it in a respectful, loving, compassionate way, in the best way that I can for me,
Mhm. Yeah,
not for them, for me. It's how I need
exactly.
to feel good. So that's
What
the
is good for you? Yeah,
boundaries.
yeah. Yeah, I always tell people you have to feel what's good for you.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what it's, for someone else, you don't have to be mean, but not, it's like sort of neutral. It's good for you. And then you tell the other person friendly, this is what I feel, this is what's good for me. And it's their part if they don't like it. It's nothing to do with you.
Right, right. And so, Ingeborg, as we start to come to an end of this, so can you, I know all of your show notes, everything from your bio and everything's going to be underneath this, so they can look up how to find you, but can you tell people how to find you and about how they could work with you?
Yeah, sure. Well, easiest maybe with my website, metamindbreakthrough.com. Or you can find me on LinkedIn under my full name, Ingeborg Mooiweer. Not an easy name, but it's the only name in the whole world. So if they know how to write it, they can find me. And I'm on the other socials as well, but LinkedIn is most easiest, I would say, and my website. And
Yep.
then we can do discovery call. It's for free, and you can take it from there if they see if we are fit to work together.
Yes. And just remember, just because she's in the Netherlands doesn't mean that she can't work with you here in the US if that's where you're watching, or the UK. So
Yeah.
very good. And then, so I am a certified divorce coach, meaning that I'm trained in the complexities of divorce. I specialize in high conflict divorce, especially from toxic narcissistic partners. My late husband, my dad, and myself all lived through the narcissistic abuse in some form or another. Most of it in my dad and my case was physical. So I can tell you, not only do I know it knowledgeably, I know it from experience. So when you can reach me by emailing me at coachtinalynn@gmail.com, that's CoachTinaLynn@gmail.com. My website is divorcecoachspecialist.com. You can find me on social media, Facebook under Tina Lynn Huggins, that's Huggins, LinkedIn, Tina Huggins, Instagram, Divorce Coach Tina Lynn, TikTok under Divorce Tina. And so, Ingeborg, what would be your last minute advice for our viewers today?
Listen to your gut. A very short one, but that's I know from my own experience and from all the clients I've helped with, there's always something in your gut, intuition, whatever you want to call it, where you feel this is not right. and trust that, because that's always right for you. And start looking for people who can help you, that you don't have to do it alone. Make sure you're safe and your kids are safe if it's in that situation. And start, sort of rebuilding yourself once you're out. But first make sort of practical decisions. Reach out to someone like you if you want to go for divorce. But first, get a place where you can stay with your kids, rest, and then take the practical steps after that. And usually what I know from experience as well, people need some sort of therapy, some sort of help to get back on track. You don't have to do it alone. It's very hard, and what you suffered and what you experienced, it's insane in one word. So, and you want to be there for your kids, and you want to be a healthy parent for your kids. So get some help, and get yourself safe, get yourself out of there. That's what I would say.
Yes, and I 100% agree with what Ingeborg says. The side note to that is that you can't do it alone. If you try to do it alone, the process takes so long to go through, and the pain is unbearable and very difficult to heal from. So the injury never heals unless you get some help. So reach out, get help. If you are trying to divorce, obviously I would recommend a divorce coach. And if you are coming out of a marriage, or even a child that was maybe years ago involved in narcissistic abuse of some form, then reach out to Ingeborg. She can help you deal with this. And if she can't help you, I'm sure she has a list of people that can. It is about asking for that help. So that's the first thing that I would tell you, is to ask for that help. Reach out, ask. That's your first step to healing. It's your first step out of an abusive relationship. It's your first step to help getting you and your kids into a safe place. And I love that Ingeborg says, and get some sleep, get some rest, because that is where your brain heals. That's the only time your brain can do its healing. You can do the work, talk to Ingeborg, but until you go to sleep, the brain doesn't have a chance to go through the healing process. So make sure that you are getting the help and getting the rest that you need. So thank you very much for joining us, Ingeborg. I appreciate that. And one of the things that's super, super important as we wrap up here is that many people, including myself, we're going through difficult times, and all we can think about is suicide, ending this pain and getting out of here. If you are in that place and you are dealing with suicide, please call the National Suicide Prevention Hotline here in the US at 988. In the Netherlands, it's 133. Get the support right now that you need. Help, get some help. Have somebody talk with you, and they will guide you to your next step. If you are dealing with domestic violence, if you are in a situation, as any situation is, call 911. In the UK, it's 999. In the Netherlands, it's 112. Get the police there, and I ask you or implore you to press charges on the individual. These charges are your key out of an abusive relationship. Do not drop those charges. Oftentimes, when you drop the charges, the abuse that's on the other end of the charges is much worse than it was on the front end of the charges. So use those charges to get yourself out of that situation. If you or somebody you know is dealing with domestic violence, please call a domestic violence hotline at 800-799-7233. That number again is 800-799-7233. And we can go back into that. In the Netherlands, call 112. Get the police involved, get the people you need involved, and get the help. So if this has been helpful for you, please like, comment, and share this information so that it can help others. And Ingeborg, again, I appreciate you coming on and sharing your vast knowledge with our viewers. And I thank you very much. And I wish everyone a blessed rest of the day.
Thank you. And it's lovely to be on the show and share my experience. And I hope people enjoyed it and do something with it.
Thank you.